All right, welcome to our second session, the collaboration between the CCCC Small Business Center and the CCCC Library. This session today is about trends in industries, and it's an introduction to ABI Inform and First Research, which is an industry report. So my name is Morgan. You can see my contact information is there. I'm going to drop my email into the chat. You can always email me if you have any questions. Before we get started on today's content, I'm actually going to give you some quick reminders and also some things that I think will be helpful based on some questions I received at the end of session one. This should address most of the things that people had questions about or wanted to know more about. So first thing is you absolutely should and can get a public library card. I cannot emphasize to you enough the importance of getting a public library card, especially as you try to access these databases. The first session that we did, you could get by without a public library card. I think that these next two sessions are going to cover so much information that is going to open up to you if you have a public library card. Now, obviously, you can use the CCCC library, but a lot of the databases are only going to be accessible if you're either a currently enrolled student taking a curriculum, continuing education class, or a faculty staff member. Other than that, I would say if you're wanting to work at home and you're like, I don't have time to come to the library, you're going to want to have that public library card. And also, can I just say, just as a librarian, I think the public library is probably one of the best resources. Once you get your library card, it will open up to you a world of possibility that that not only opens you up to the resources, but also if they're having workshops and programming and events that is relevant for you, then you'll know about it. So I'm just going to say that's my little speech about you should get a public library card, but it will be really helpful for you, especially as you get deeper into market research. Whoops. We're going to get to that in just a minute. The CCCC library never gives business, tax, financial, or legal advice of any kind. I cannot emphasize enough how much we do not do that. I will connect you to resources, but I do not give you advice on anything. If you have questions about taxes, you are going to want to contact the North Carolina State Department of Revenue. They're going to have a lot of great resources for you. Here is a link that can help you get started. But then also the CCCC Small Business Center is frequently putting on events, webinars, and seminars that cover taxes. And I've actually dropped that link into the chat as well. They do a great job, and you're going to have experts from both of those locations that can help you with that. I'm not an expert on taxes. I'm not an expert on financial stuff. I'm not an expert on legal stuff. I can only connect you with library resources and show you how to use them. There are some things that you can do where you're like, this is great. This is free and I'm already like engaged with this and that's awesome. And then there's some things you're going to want to think about, where do I need to invest a little bit more to get experts help? And I would say, like, when it comes to taxes, you don't want to cut corners. I'll just leave it at that. And then questions about your business, like what should I do? How should I approach this, business thing? Again, I've never owned a business before. I will go ahead and tell you, I don't have as much courage or clarity or organization as you would need to be a business owner. I just don't have those skills. I'm a librarian because I want to help you get to your next spot. But the Small Business Center is going to give you that one-to-one guidance and counseling and be able to answer your questions in ways that are much more meaningful and significant. So that's not to sort of say, I can't help you. I can help you find resources, but I cannot give you any business advice. So I hope that kind of clarifies some things. And I hope that's not off-putting. I want it to be you get in touch with the right people at the right time for the right purposes. And then a couple of other quick reminders. The Entrepreneurial Mindset Training course is totally free to you. You do not have to pay for it. NC Live resources and materials can be accessed through a public library card. If you don't live in North Carolina, your local public library may have options for you. So I would reach out to them and then get your public library card in the area of where you live. That is really going to be your best bet when getting access to these databases that we're going to talk about today and next week. And then I received a couple of questions about what questions to ask and what data to collect on when it comes to looking for resources. And where do you start and what questions do you ask? So I think this resource right here will be very helpful. This is the Opportunity Discovery Canvas. I dropped it into the chat there for you. Now, I will say, I'm going to open it up. It is also located on the Small Business Center guide that the library created. So if you are wanting that, you can also get it there. But it's just going to ask you some questions to think about. And that will allow you to notice where your soft spots are so that you can then kind of address that. But it will also help you think about, what do I need to know? What kind of questions do I need to answer? So that is there for you. And if you need more specific questions, I would say fill out that Opportunity Discovery Canvas, and then you can start to think about, oh, this actually inspires this question, or it at least gives you a jumping off point. Any questions about that before we dive into the actual content? And you're going to get all these links in an email, so you can bookmark them if you would like, but you'll also get them later as well. Okay. So today we're going to do an overview of strategies for identifying some trends and some caveats about those trends. We're going to introduce first research and ABI Inform, and then I'm going to demonstrate ABI Inform, and then I'll just answer any questions if you have them. The objectives for today: identify strategies for identifying trends, and then understand the value of ABI Inform in locating industry reports, particularly first research. So today we're going to go pretty straightforward. I will say that I'm going to be accessing a majority of things through the CCCC directions, but I've also got for you in the slides how you would get to all this information if you're going from a public library. So it's pretty straightforward either way. I just want you to know the way that I'm sort of presenting how you would get to that database may be a little different than how you approach it. All right, so trends are really important to know because it tells us where things are headed, and it also tells us what's happening now and what the future can look like. And I think that's probably pretty important when you're thinking about building a business or starting one or nurturing one. I think the other thing to kind of think about is that industry reports and associations can be great in helping you kind of discuss what's happening in my field, what's happening in my industry, what is the future going to look like, what are some new things that are happening, and then also where does this suggest things are going to go. And of course, every industry is different, and so finding just that right sort of pattern of information is probably going to be different for everybody. But these are some things that might be helpful for you as you think about big picture and more specific. I do want to give you a caveat of some things to think about, though, as you are kind of looking through industry reports and looking at what are the patterns and the sort of the big picture thinking and the more specific thing about your community and where you're wanting to start your business. Does everybody remember, like in school, whether that's high school or in college, where the teacher would say, hey, you're going to do a research paper, and you had to go and you had to find research in this one place, and then you had to find it another place, and then you had to find it another place, and then you had to put it all together. You really had to synthesize information, and that is almost, besides the kind of information, is frequently very much a similar process. There is not probably going to be any one source that you look at and say, I got everything that I need. I just have to look at this one website or this one article and I am done with my research. It is going to be a synthesis of a lot of different information that will help you then inform your next decision. It will help you get a big picture of what is happening. It would be great if you could just go to one place, read everything you ever needed to know, and that would be great. But that is not really the reality of where information is stored or how it's stored. And so you're going to want to think about, how do I synthesize multiple sources to give me enough information to make the next best decision? And so I will also encourage you to think about one other thing, which is, if you're going in looking for something super specific and you're hoping that your source will tell you exactly what you want to read, I don't want to say it's impossible, but sometimes we have to let go of expectations in order to be open-minded to what the information actually does offer. Does that mean that no such source exists? Maybe not. It's possible that we're going to have to look in a couple of different places, but is it going to give you, in a nice, neat little package, everything that you want to see? Probably not. Especially as the question gets more specific, you are going to have to balance your expectations with what is available through the resources that you have or through information that is available. Does that make sense? Okay. So, okay, great. Yay. I'm glad that it makes sense. So let's start with, how would you actually identify the trends? And then where do you go from there? So one thing you can do is you can look at industry reports. Industry reports, as I'm sure many of you know, but I'll go ahead and give you a quick definition, are documents that give you insights into various challenges, opportunities, trends, and other factors that are currently impacting or may soon begin to shape the market of your industry. Industry reports can cover a variety of different fields. However, some people's industries may be so specific that you actually have to focus on the associations instead. So they can be very exclusive sometimes, depending on the industry that you're in. And so while first research is great, it may not be as thorough as you need it to be. And you would want to then check with your industry association to see what else they might have to offer, because they are going to probably be able to give you some insight into what's happening in that industry in a way that, if you can't get first research, this is a great complement to that process of looking for trends. Even if you found a lot of information on first research, associations can still be really great in providing you with some perspective and some connections. So another thing you can think about, which it's not as specific, although you can look up different types of information, is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce website. And I'm going to go ahead and drop that in there for you. You can look up different articles. You can look and see what kind of resources they have related to your industry. In my example, I kind of pretended, and you'll see that, to be a bookseller. And I actually looked at like trends in bookstores, and they had an article for me. And I thought, oh, that's pretty neat. Now, it's not always going to be the case, but you can do some exploring and kind of figure out if that is something that's valuable for you. And you may find that website serves as a great jumping off point for just to see what's out there and to see kind of what's in conversation right now. And then I will also drop another link from the Small Business Guide from the library on this page. You will notice I have also highlighted the Chamber of Commerce for Harnett County, Lee County, and Chatham County. Your local chamber is going to be great at kind of getting you connected and giving you some perspective, not just what is happening in the sort of the big picture of the trends, but also what is happening in your community. What is happening right here in Lillington or right here in Sanford. So that can be really helpful in kind of seeing what's the thing that is happening right outside my window, right in my neighborhood. And you are probably going to get lots of good connections of people who maybe, if you haven't already joined, they can kind of help guide you through the process. That would be helpful in making connections, but also gaining some community that can then help you as you make your next steps. So I'm going to kind of give you an example of what I am going to kind of pretend that I'm a bookseller. And I'm going to show you how I might go about this process of identifying trends, but also thinking about like, how do I find industry reports? So, although Google is tempting to use, it may not always give you the most accurate results. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. In my demonstration, I'm thinking about opening up a bookstore. I should check out the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Kind of chatted with you guys about that already. ABI Inform, which we'll be doing that today. And then next week, we'll be looking at data axle reference solutions. I should also look at the American Booksellers Association and my local chamber just to see what's happening. Again, notice here that I have to pull information from at least 4 or 5 different sources. I can't just say, well, I'm just going to look at one spot. It's not going to be as effective for me to look in just one spot because that gives me only part of the picture. So I might start on Google and I might say, well, I'm going to look at trends for bookstores. And this AI overview is very tempting to use. I might be like, wow, this is great. It's not wrong, but it would be better if I just kind of go over here to the Chamber of Commerce and focus on the article itself instead of assuming that the synthesis of information I get from AI is actually kind of the end all be all. So in some ways, Google is excellent in the sense of you get a lot of information, but it's also challenging because there's a lot of kind of red herrings. I don't know if y'all read mysteries, but it's almost like clues that point you in the wrong direction. And so in my opinion, right here, the red herring is right here, is that AI overview. So you can click on the Chamber of Commerce and then see kind of what's going on today. What's the conversation about? And you can kind of read through here. I would say that it's great to kind of check this out and kind of read a little bit and kind of get to know what's going on. But again, I wouldn't necessarily just stop here. I would explore what are some other things that might be available to me. So I've clicked on that link. There's some other things, Fast Company, Bookazine. I mean, I don't really know what that is, so I'm taking a risk by clicking on it. But I will say that you will notice here, like we've got in Parade magazine. I'm not sure that that's like where we really want to pick up most of our information, but we've got a date here that lets us know, okay, it was written about a month ago. But if I start to explore a little bit more, I may not find quite as much information. Now, the University of Michigan is great. That's a great resource. But notice here, 2021. I can still think about it. It doesn't mean I can't use it to inform some of my information and knowledge. But does 2021 look exactly like 2026? Maybe not. So I just want to think about, okay, what am I looking at? What do I need? How do I want to use it? The future of print books and bookstores. Maybe I want to see where my industry has come from, but I need to do some more research to see where it's going. Does that thought process make sense? That sort of, okay, I'm going to look at it from this perspective of I have this information need. I'm going to fill it in this particular way. Great. So now, like I've looked at the rising popularity, I've looked at the, oh, yeah, great. I've looked at the Chamber of Commerce. I've looked to see what Google has said, recognizing that there are some caveats there. And then I'm going to show y'all ABI Inform in just a minute, but I'm also going to want to check American Booksellers Association. And then I can click on it, and then I can kind of explore more of the resources. I can consider some membership. I can look at the news for publishers. Just kind of tells me what are people who are doing what I want to do or currently doing. How are they handling the environment? How are they thriving in the market? What should I be aware of that they have already noticed? And that can also kind of help you to see like what are they involved in that you might also want to think about being involved in. So I've looked in those multiple directions to kind of inform some of my decisions. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about getting an industry report. And so industry reports are really excellent resources. First Research is great because it's US focused and it tends to be really comprehensive. It would typically require a subscription. However, while it's your choice to subscribe, the library and your local public library does offer that First Research in one of its databases. So before you subscribe, you might think about just checking out what we have, and then you can decide for yourself what you ultimately want to do. ABI is a top resource for industry reports. If you have a public library card, you can access this database at home as long as you log in with your library card number and your PIN number for that library card. If you're working with the CCCC library, you're going to want to come into the library to access that database. We would love to see you. I know that if you came into the Harnett Campus Library, I would just love to help you out, and I can show you how to get connected to that particular database. So also, this is a great reason why having a public library card is so good, because you can just work at home if you really are wanting to stay home and use this database. Again, I'm going to send you guys these slides. This is how you would access it at CCCC Library, like where you would find the database. Public library access, I've given you that link. And then essentially you would sign in with your library card number and your PIN number. And that PIN number is one that you've set up with you in your library, and they can kind of help you. Maybe you have a library card, but you got locked out for some reason. They can help you kind of get reset, and you can go from that point. I'm going to paste that ABI Inform link in there just so that you can have it, but you will get these slides, so don't worry too much about that. Okay, so I'm going to show you, again, like I said, I'm going to show you how I would access it from CCCC. This would look very similar to how you're accessing it if you were sitting on the campus, at this moment in the library. But if you're at home, the public library access is going to be your best bet. I do have a handout for you. The handout is actually going to show you how to access industry reports once you are logged into the database. So this handout is really like, okay, I'm in the database, I'm looking at it, now I've got to find the industry reports. So that's where the handout really starts, and it carries you through the process. And we will get back to the ABI Inform in any time that you have questions about it. You can say, hey, Morgan, I went to your session on ABI Inform. I don't remember how to access it. Can you help me out? So we can always come back to that and really work through that process of getting you what you need so that you can get the industry reports that you would like to access. So I'm going to go to the library. I'm going to drop the library's link in here just so you can kind of see where I'm at. I'm going to go to the databases, and then I'm going to do A to Z listing. And ABI Inform is going to be one of the first that's there. In a lot of your public library cases, it'll be very similar. It'll be one of the first databases that's listed. So I'm going to click on that. And it's going to log me directly in. You can see I'm being authenticated by CCCC. You'll probably find that once you log into your library, you'll see that you're through that particular library. Okay, so now we are at ABI Informed Collection. We're kind of at that home page for the database. This is where the handout really picks up and kind of shows you step by step how you get there. I'm going to go to browse. So I've got a lot of options up here. I'm going to start with browse. And the reason I'm going to start with browse is because ABI Informed Collection doesn't just offer industry reports and first research. It's great. I love that it does that. But you actually can access academic articles, newspapers, magazines. You can see here you can also access trade journals and working papers. This really gives you a big picture of the kind of business market and gives you a lot of different types of sources, not just industry reports. To get to your industry reports, you're going to go to Browse, and we're going to click on that. And you will see one of the first things is First Research. And I'm going to click on First Research. Now, all these industry reports are organized by their industry alphabetically. I will say that some of you may find that your industry, the business that you're starting or want to start is covering a variety of different industries. So you may actually have to look up multiple different types of industry reports just to ensure that you're covering all of your bases. I will also tell you that some are going to be more straightforward than others. So we might think about bookstores or as really straightforward. And for that case, it really is. But you may find that your industry is being referred to in a different way. I'm having a hard time thinking of an example right now, but let's say, for example, maybe you're thinking about something that's retail. There is a retail industry report available, and you can look there. But you may also be wanting to look at something more specific, and there may be a way that it's being referred to in these industry reports that doesn't feel very familiar for you. It feels like that's a different way to phrase it. And I would be happy to help you locate the industry report. You might be like, look, I don't want any help doing the market research. I'm totally fine. I just can't figure out how the database is referring to my industry. That's a keyword thing. And we can help you locate, hey, you might want to try these keywords and search for them alphabetically in this way, just to find the industry report. So it really doesn't have to be about, you have someone that's going to hold your hand the entire process. If that's what you want, then we'll help you get to the right resources and the right people. But if you're just like, I just need some help brainstorming some keywords so that I can find the right thing that I'm looking for, we can do that too. So I'm, in this example, a bookseller. So I'm going to go to the letter B, and then I'm going to scroll down to the industry that I want to locate. So I'm going to keep scrolling, and then there's the book industry, book publishers, bookstores. I'm going to go with bookstores. It might be helpful for me to look at the book industry and publishing industry, but I think I'm going to just go with bookstores right now. I'm going to click on that. It says view 24 documents. I do not know why they are listed ascending. I'm not sure like what the methodology is for why it does that, but it really would be more helpful if you click on this and you click most recent first, because it's going to tell you the most recent industry report that's available. So it would change it, and then it would organize it to most recent first. And then, of course, you can see here there's lots of different reports, and I can always explore what the past might have looked like if I want to just be more informed. But here is the most recent report, which I'm going to click on. And it's going to then bring up the industry report, and then I can read through it. Kind of tells me the industry overview, some things to think about, sales and marketing, financial reports, international insights, regional insights, human resources, that kind of thing. Taking a look at that, does anybody have any questions? Feel free to drop it into the chat. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple things you can do with this database that could be really fun. You can you can copy the URL, you can email it to yourself, or you can just directly email it. You can click all options, and then there's the email button right there, and you just put your email in there, and then you can email yourself the industry report. You can also download the PDF if you're somebody that likes to read the paper version, or you prefer the PDF. You can download the PDF and then you can print from that point, or you can print it here. And the libraries, your public libraries are going to have printers that would allow you to do that. And notice here, when I download the PDF, it's going to say, hey, you might have some other things you want to take a look at. And at that point, if you wanted to download those, you could, or you could click on some things. So does anybody have any questions about how to access these industry reports through ABI Inform? Okay, not at the time. And that's totally fine. If you think of a question later, that's great. I would love to answer some questions. I'd be happy to connect you with the database again, and a handout or anything that clarifies how you might use this database. Now, that's a good question. Terry may answer this one. Do RISE participants have access to the CCCC library? As community members, you could get a community card, but Terry, RISE participants are not considered technically like enrolled students, are they?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, they're not enrolled students.
Okay. So you could get a community card, but you would have to come in, and that community card is not going to give you access to the databases. So you'd still have to sit down at the computer and access ABI Inform that way. So that's kind of why the public library card is so beneficial. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so this has been like a really straightforward session. I am gonna give you just one more piece of information. So here is another industry report kind of resource. So IBIS World offers industry reports, and I dropped the link in the chat for you there. And that's really what they do, is they do the industry reports and gives you just a lot of information. Because it's super specific, CCCC Library does not currently offer it. But it does tend to be something that is offered at universities. And I have looked at universities across North Carolina, and here is a list of the universities that offer IBS or IBIS World, that you can then, if you go into their library, you can use it at that library. And a librarian there would be able to kind of coach you through either how to use it or how to access it, and kind of know the next steps if you're looking for an industry report through that database. So that's really great if you're just looking for more information. I know that is sometimes you just want to have more access to more things, and these universities are going to have access to that database, so they can kind of walk you through that process. And they have librarians there that can kind of coach you through, accessing it, sitting down, where are the public computers, that kind of thing. And then I see a question here, kind of a specific question, but would bakery would be considered what industry? So if you've no problem with it, we can actually look up. Let's see here. We can actually go to and see, browsing by industry, what might be available. So we can look up, let's just click on the letter B and see what's up. So there's baking industry right there. But so you've got the baking industry, but like, I can't remember if I've done this one or not, but I think, let me check and see here. Let's see here. Yeah, so when you are looking here, you will see a lot more broad categories. So the baking industry might be a singular one. In the next session, we may actually have to think about baking or bookstores or whatever your industry is in some more nuanced ways, because of the way that it might be referred to in that database data axle reference solution. So it might look a little different. So just kind of keep in mind that, whether you look at one item here, you may end up having to look at multiple items in data axle, or vice versa. You might look at multiple items here and then only one in data axle. And it's really about, what does your information need? And then what resource answers that information need? And then how do you synthesize it and put it all together? So I'm going to drop a link into the chat. That lets me know, like, if you have any remaining questions, if you're wanting to chat about something. It also asks you about your level of comfort with the resources that we offer. So if you're like, yeah, I'm never going to use this, that's okay. That just lets me know, like, what can we do to, make you more comfortable with this resource? What can we do to connect you to a resource that you find more beneficial? It's really not about, you have to use this resource and only this resource. It's really, where are you at in your process, and how can we help you to make the very next best step, whatever that might look like. And then finally, here is my information one more time, and I'm going to drop the CCCC Library Small Business Guide into the chat one more time so that you can have access to that. But that is pretty much how you access an industry report through ABI Inform, what it contains, and then where you might build on that industry report through a quick Google search or through other research through associations or the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, depending on what you need at any given time.